I'm Pat Tully of the Ketchikan Public Library, and this is Reading Aloud. Tonight I'm going to read two short stories, both about lightning. One is by Herman Melville, and the other one is by Mark Twain. So I'm going to start with Herman Melville, and the title of the story is The Lightning Rod Man. What grand irregular thunder, thought I, standing on my hearthstone among the Acroceraunian hills, as the scattered bolts boomed overhead and crashed down among the valleys, every bolt followed by zigzag irradiations and swift slants of sharp rain, which audibly rang like a charge of spear points on my low shingled roof. I suppose, though, that the mountains hereabouts break and churn up the thunder, so that it is far more glorious here than on the plain. Hark! Someone at the door. Who is this that chooses a time of thunder for making calls? And why don't he, man fashion, use the knocker, instead of making that doleful undertaker's clatter with his fist against the hollow panel? But let him in. Ah, here he comes. Good day, sir. An entire stranger. Pray be seated. What is it, that strange-looking walking stick he carries? A fine thunderstorm, sir. Fine? Awful. You are wet. Stand here on the hearth before the fire. Not for worlds. The stranger still stood in the exact middle of the cottage where he had first planted himself. His singularity impelled a closer scrutiny. A lean, gloomy figure, hair dark and lank, mattedly streaked over his brow. His sunken pitfalls of eyes were ringed by indigo halos and played with an innocuous sort of lightning, the gleam without the bolt. The whole man was dripping. He stood in a puddle on the bare oak floor, his strange walking stick vertically resting at his side. It was a polished copper rod, 4 feet long, lengthwise attached to a neat wooden staff by insertion of 2 balls of greenish glass, ringed with copper bands. The metal rod terminated at the top tripod-wise in 3 keen tines, brightly gilt. He held the thing by the wooden part alone. Sir, said I, bowing politely, have I the honor of a visit from that illustrious god, Jupiter Tonans? So stood he in the Greek statue of old, grasping the thunderbolt. If you be he, or his viceroy, I have to thank you for this noble storm you have brewed among our mountains. Listen, that was a glorious peal. Also, to a lover of the majestic, it is a good thing to have the thunderer himself in one's cottage. The thunder grows finer for that. But pray be seated. This old rush-bottom armchair, I grant, is a poor substitute for your evergreen throne on Olympus, but condescend to be seated. While I thus pleasantly spoke, the stranger eyed me, half in wonder and half in a strange sort of horror, but did not move a foot. Do, sir, be seated. You need to be dried ere going forth again. I planted the chair invitingly on the broad hearth, where a little fire had been kindled that afternoon to dissipate the dampness, not the cold, for it was early in the month of September. But without heeding my solicitation, and still standing in the middle of the floor, the stranger gazed at me portentously and spoke. Sir, said he, excuse me, but instead of my accepting your invitation to be seated on the hearth there, I solemnly warn you that you had best accept mine and stand with me in the center of the room. Good heavens, he cried, starting. There is another of those awful crashes. I warn you, sir, quit the hearth. Mr. Jupiter Tonans, said I, quietly rolling my body on the stone, I stand very well here. Are you so hardly ignorant, then, he cried, as not to know that by far the most dangerous part of a house during such a terrific tempest as this is the fireplace? Nay, I did not know that. involuntarily stepping upon the first board next to the stone. The stranger now assumed such an unpleasant air of successful admonition that, quite involuntarily again, I stepped back upon the hearth and threw myself into the erectest, proudest posture I could command. But I said nothing. "For heaven's sake," he cried with a strange mixture of alarm and intimidation, "for heaven's sake, get off the hearth. Know you not that the heated air and soot are conductors, to say nothing of those immense iron fire dogs? Quit the spot. I conjure, I command you." "Mr. Jupiter Tonans, I am not accustomed to be commanded in my own house." "Call me not by that pagan name. You are profane in this time of terror." "Sir, will you be so good as to tell me your business? If you seek shelter from the storm, you are welcome, as long as you be civil. But if you come on business, open it forthwith. Who are you?" "I am a dealer in lightning rods," said the stranger, softening his tone. "My special business is—" Merciful heavens, what a crash! "Have you ever been struck? Your premises, I mean." "No, it's best to be provided," significantly rattling his metallic staff on the floor. "By nature, there are no castles in thunderstorms. Yet, say but the word, in this cottage I can make a Gibraltar by a few waves of this wand. Hark, what Himalayas of concussions!" "You interrupted yourself. Your special business you were about to speak of?" "My special business is to travel the country for orders for lightning rods. This is my specimen rod," tapping his staff. "I have the best of references," fumbling in his pockets. "In Cregan last month I put up 23 rods on only 5 buildings. Let me see. Was it not at Cregan last week, about midnight on Saturday, that the steeple, the big elm, and the assembly room cupola were struck? Any of your rods there?" "Not on the tree and the cupola, but the steeple." "Of what use is your rod, then?" "Of life and death use. But my workman was heedless. In fitting the rod at the top of the steeple, he allowed a part of the metal to graze the tin sheeting. Hence the accident. Not my fault, but his. Hark!" "Never mind. That clap burst quite loud enough to be heard without finger-pointing. Did you hear of the event at Montreal last year? A servant girl struck at her bedside with a rosary in her hand, the beads being metal. Does your beat extend into the Canadas?" "No. And I hear that there iron rods only are in use. They should have mine, which are copper. Iron is easily fused. Then they draw out the rod so slender that it has not body enough to conduct the full electric current. The metal melts, and the building is destroyed. My copper rods never act so. Those Canadians are fools. Some of them knob the rod at the top, which risks a deadly explosion, instead of imperceptibly carrying down the current into the earth as this sort of rod does. Mine is the only true rod. Look at it. Only $1 a foot." This abuse of your own calling and another might make one distrustful with respect to yourself. "Hark! The thunder becomes less muttering. It is nearing us, and nearing the earth too. Hark! One crammed crash. All the vibrations made one by nearness. Another flash. Hold!" "What do you?" I said, seeing him now, instantaneously relinquishing his staff, lean intently forward toward the window, with his right fore and middle fingers on his left wrist. But ere the words had well escaped me, another exclamation escaped him. "Crash! Only 3 pulses, less than a third of a mile off, yonder, somewhere in that wood. I passed 3 stricken oaks there, stripped out new and glittering. The oak draws lightning more than other timber, having iron in solution in its sap. Your floor here seems oak. Heart of oak. From the peculiar time of your call upon me, I suppose you purposely select stormy weather for your journeys. When thunder is roaring, you deem it an hour peculiarly favorable for producing impressions favorable to your trade. Hark! Awful! For one who would arm others with fear, you seem unbeseemingly timorous yourself. Common men choose fair weather for their travels. You choose thunderstorms, and yet, that I travel in thunderstorms, I grant, but not without particular precautions, such as only a lightning rod man may know. Hark! Quick! Look at my specimen rod. Only $1 a foot. A very fine rod, I dare say, but what are these particular precautions of yours? Yet first let me close yonder shutters. The slanting rain is beating through the sash. I will bar up. Are you mad? Know you not that yon iron bar is a swift conductor? Desist. I will simply close the shutters then, and call my boy to bring me a wooden bar. Pray touch that bell pull there. Are you frantic? That bell wire might blast you. Never touch bell wire in a thunderstorm, nor ring a bell of any sort. Nor those in belfries? Pray, will you tell me where and how one may be safe in a time like this? Is there any part of my house I may touch with hopes of my life? There is, but not where you now stand. Come away from the wall. The current will sometimes run down a wall, and, a man being a better conductor than a wall, it would leave the wall and run into him. Swoop! That must have fallen very nigh. That must have been globular lightning. Very probably. Tell me at once, which is, in your opinion, the safest part of this house? This room, and this one spot in it where I stand. Come hither. The reasons first. Hark! After the flash, the gust, the sashes shiver. The house, come hither to me. The reasons, if you please. Come hither to me. Thank you again. I think I will try my old stand, the hearth. And now, Mr. Lightning Rod Man, in the pauses of the thunder, be so good as to tell me your reasons for esteeming this one room of the house the safest, and your own one standpoint where there the safest spot in it. There was now a little cessation in the storm for a while. The Lightning Rod Man seemed relieved, and replied, Your house is a one-storied house, with an attic and a cellar. This room is between. Hence its comparative safety, because lightning sometimes passes from the clouds to the earth, and sometimes from the earth to the clouds. Do you comprehend? And I choose the middle of the room, because if the lightning should strike the house at all, it would come down the chimney or walls. So, obviously, the further you are from them, the better. Come hither to me, now. Presently, something you just said, instead of alarming me, has strangely inspired confidence. What have I said? You said that sometimes lightning flashes from the earth to the clouds. Aye, the returning stroke, as it is called, when the earth, being overcharged with the fluid, flashes its surplus upward. The returning stroke, that is, from the earth to the sky, better and better. But come here on the hearth and dry yourself. I am better here and better wet. How? It is the safest thing you can do. Hark again! To get yourself thoroughly drenched in a thunderstorm. Wet clothes are better conductors than the body, and so, if the lightning strike, it might pass down the wet clothes without touching the body. The storm deepens again. Have you a rug in the house? Rugs are non-conductors. Get one that I may stand on it here, and you too. The skies blacken. It is dusk at noon. Hark! The rug! The rug! I gave him one, while the hooded mountains seemed closing and tumbling into the cottage. And now, since our being dumb will not help us, said I, resuming my place, let me hear your precautions in traveling during thunderstorms. Wait till this one has passed. Nay, proceed with the precautions. You stand in the safest possible place according to your own account. Go on. Briefly, then, I avoid pine trees, high houses, lonely barns, upland pastures, running water, flocks of cattle and sheep, a crowd of men. If I travel on foot, as today, I do not walk fast. If in my buggy, I touch not its back nor sides. If on horseback, I dismount and lead the horse. But of all things, I avoid tall men. Do I dream? Man avoid man, and in danger time too? Tall men in a thunderstorm I avoid. Are you so grossly ignorant as not to know that the height of a 6-footer is sufficient to discharge an electric cloud upon him? Are not lonely Kentuckians plowing smit in their unfinished furrow? Nay, if a 6-footer stand by running water, the cloud will sometimes select him as its conductor to that running water. Hark! Sure, yon black pinnacle is split. Yes, a man is a good conductor. The lightning goes through and through a man, but only peels a tree. But, sir, you have kept me so long answering your questions that I have not yet come to business. Will you order one of my rods? Look at this specimen one. See, it is of the best of copper. Copper's the best conductor. Your house is low, but being upon the mountains, that lowness does not one whit depress it. You mountaineers are most exposed. In mountainous countries, the lightning rod man should have the most business. Look at the specimen, sir. One rod will answer for a house so small as this. Look over these recommendations. Only one rod, sir. Cost only $20. Hark! There go all the granite tectonics and Hoosic dashed together like pebbles. By the sound, that must have struck something. An elevation of 5 feet above the house will protect 20 feet radius all about the rod. Only $20, sir. $1 a foot. Hark! Dreadful! Will you order? Will you buy? Shall I put down your name? Think of being a heap of charred offal, like a haltered horse burnt in its stall, and all in one flash. You pretended envoy extraordinary and minister plenipotentiary to and from Jupiter Tonans, laughed I. You mere man who come here to put you and your pipe stem between clay and sky. Do you think that because you can strike a bit of green light from the Leyden jar, that you can thoroughly avert the supernal bolt? Your rod rusts or breaks, and where are you? Who has empowered you, you Tetzel, to peddle around your indulgences from divine ordinations? The hairs on our head are numbered, and the days of our lives. In thunder as in sunshine, I stand at ease in the hands of my God. False negotiator, away! See, the scroll of the storm is rolled back, and the house is unharmed. And in the blue heavens I read in the rainbow that the deity will not, of purpose, make war on man's earth. Impious wretch, foamed the stranger, blackening in the face as the rainbow beamed. I will publish your infidel notions. The scowl grew blacker on his face. The indigo circles enlarged round his eyes as the storm rings round the midnight moon. He sprang upon me, his tri-forked thing at my heart. I seized it, I snapped it, I dashed it, I trod it, and dragging the dark lightning king out of my door, flung his elbowed copper scepter after him. But spite of my treatment, and spite of my dissuasive talk of him to my neighbors, the lightning rod man still dwells in the land, still travels in storm time, and drives a brave trade with the fears of man. The end. So next is Mark Twain's story, Mrs. McWilliams and the Lightning. Well, sir, continued Mr. McWilliams, for this was not the beginning of his talk, the fear of lightning is one of the most distressing infirmities a human being can be afflicted with. It is mostly confined to women, but now and then you find it in a little dog, and sometimes in a man. It is a particularly distressing infirmity, for the reason that it takes the sand out of a person to an extent which no other fear can, and it can't be reasoned with, and neither can it be shamed out of a person. A woman who could face the very devil himself or a mouse, loses her grip and goes all to pieces in front of a flash of lightning. Her fright is something pitiful to see. Well, as I was telling you, I woke up with that smothered in an unlocatable cry of, "Mortimer! Mortimer!" wailing in my ears. And as soon as I could scrape my faculties together, I reached over in the dark and then said, "Evangeline, is that you calling? What's the matter? Where are you?" "Shut up in the boot closet. You ought to be ashamed to lie there and sleep so, with such an awful storm going on." "Why, how can one be ashamed when he is asleep? It's unreasonable. A man can't be ashamed when he is asleep, Evangeline." "You never try, Mortimer. You know very well you never try." I caught the sound of muffled sobs. That sound smote dead the sharp speech that was on my lips, and I changed it to, "I'm sorry, dear. I'm truly sorry. I never meant to act so. Come back and—" "Mortimer!" "Heavens! What is the matter, my love? Do you mean to say that you are in that bed yet?" "Why, of course." "Come out of it instantly. I should think you would take some little care of your life, for my sake and the children's, if you will not for your own." "But, my love—" "Don't talk to me, Mortimer. You know there is no place so dangerous as a bed in such a thunderstorm as this. All the books say that. Yet there you would lie and deliberately throw away your life, for goodness knows what, unless for the sake of arguing and arguing and— But confound it, Evangeline, I'm not in the bed now. I'm— There, you see the result? Oh, Mortimer, how can you be so profligate as to swear at such a time as this?" "I didn't swear. And that wasn't the result of it anyway. It would have come just the same if I hadn't said a word, and you know very well, Evangeline, at least you ought to know, that when the atmosphere is charged with electricity—" "Oh, yes. Now argue it, and argue it, and argue it. I don't see how you can act so, when you know that there's not a lightning rod in the place, and your poor wife and children are absolutely at the mercy of Providence. What are you doing? Lighting a match at such a time as this? Are you stark mad?" "Hang it, woman, where's the harm? The place is as dark as the inside of an infidel, and—" "Put it out! Put it out instantly! Are you determined to sacrifice us all? You know there is nothing attracts lightning like a light." "Oh, just hear it. Now you see what you've done." "No, I don't see what I've done. A match may attract lightning for all I know, but it don't cause lightning. I'll go odds on that. And it didn't attract it worth a cent this time, for if that shot was leveled at my match, it was blessed poor marksmanship. About an average of none out of a possible million, I should say. Why, a dolly mount such marksmanship as that—" "For shame, Mortimer! Here we are standing right in the very presence of death, and yet in so solemn a moment you are capable of using such language as that. If you have no desire to— Mortimer!" "Well?" "Did you say your prayers tonight?" I meant to, but I got to trying to cipher out how much 12 times 13 is, and— Oh, we are lost, beyond all help. How could you neglect such a thing at such a time as this?" "But it wasn't such a time as this. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. How could I know there was going to be all this rumpus and powwow about a little slip like that? And I don't think it's just fair for you to make so much out of it, anyway, seeing as it happens so seldom. I haven't missed before since I brought on that earthquake 4 years ago." "Mortimer, how you talk! Have you forgotten the yellow fever?" "My dear, you are always throwing up the yellow fever to me, and I think it is perfectly unreasonable. You can't even send a telegraphic message as far as Memphis without relays, so how is a little devotional slip of mine going to carry so far? I'll stand the earthquake because it was in the neighborhood, but I'll be hanged if I'm going to be responsible for every blamed— Oh, dear, 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 I know it struck something, Mortimer. We shall never see the light of another day, and if it will do you any good to remember, when we are gone, that your dreadful language— Mortimer!" "Well, what now?" "Your voice sounds as if— Mortimer, are you actually standing in front of that open fireplace?" "That is the very crime I am committing." get away from it this moment. You do seem determined to bring destruction on us all. Don't you know that there is no better conductor for lightning than an open chimney? Now where have you got to? I'm here by the window. Oh, for pity's sake, have you lost your mind? Clear out from there this moment. The very children in arms know it is fatal to stand near a window in a thunderstorm. Dear, dear, I know I shall never see the light of another day. Mortimer. Yes. What is that rustling? It's me. What are you doing? Trying to find the upper end of my pantaloons. Quick, throw those things away. I do believe you would deliberately put on those clothes at such a time as this. Yet you know perfectly well that all the authorities agree that woolen stuffs attract lightning. Oh, dear, dear, isn't it sufficient that one's life must be in peril from natural causes? But you must do everything you can possibly think of to augment the danger. Oh, don't sing. What can you be thinking of? Now, where's the harm in it? Mortimer, if I have told you once, I have told you 100 times that singing causes vibrations in the atmosphere, which interrupt the flow of the electric fluid, and... What on earth are you opening that door for? Goodness gracious, woman, is there any harm in that? Harm? There is definite. Anybody that has given this subject any attention knows that to create a draft is to invite the lightning. You haven't half shut it. Shut it tight, and do hurry, or we are all destroyed. Oh, it is an awful thing to be shut up with a lunatic at such a time as this. Mortimer, what are you doing? Nothing, just turning on the water. This room is smothering hot and close. I want to bathe my face and hands. You have certainly parted with the remnant of your mind. Where lightning strikes any other substance once, it strikes water 50 times. Do turn it off. Oh, dear, I am sure that nothing in this world can save us. It does seem to me that... Mortimer, what was that? It was a picture. Knocked it down. Then you're close to the wall. I never heard of such imprudence. Don't you know that there is no better conductor for lightning than a wall? Come away from there. And you came as near as anything to swearing, too. Oh, how can you be so desperately wicked, and your family in such peril? Mortimer, did you order a feather bed as I asked you to? Nope, forgot it. Forgot it? It may cost you your life. If you had a feather bed now, and could spread it in the middle of the room and lie on it, you would be perfectly safe. Come in here, come quick, before you have a chance to commit any more frantic indiscretions. I tried, but the little closet would not hold us both with the door shut, unless we could be content to smother. I gasped a while, and then forced my way out. My wife called out, Mortimer, something must be done for your preservation. Give me that German book that is on the end of the mantelpiece, and a candle, but don't light it. Give me a match, and I will light it in here. That book has some directions in it. I got the book, at the cost of a vase and some other brittle things, and the madam shut herself up with her candle. I had a moment's peace, and then she called out, Mortimer, what was that? Nothing but the cat. The cat! Oh, destruction! Catch her and shut her up in the washstand. Do be quick, love. Cats are full of electricity. I just know my hair will turn white with this night's awful perils. I heard the muffled sobbings again. But for that, I should not have moved hand or foot in such a wild enterprise in the dark. However, I went at my task, over chairs and against all sorts of obstructions, all of them hard ones too, and most of them with sharp edges. And at last I got Kitty cooped up on the commode at the expense of over $400 in broken furniture and shins. Then these muffled words came from the closet. It says that the safest thing is to stand on a chair in the middle of the room, Mortimer, and the legs of the chair must be insulated with non-conductors. That is, you must set the legs of the chair in glass tumblers. Oh, hear that! Do hurry, Mortimer, before you are struck. I managed to find and secure the tumblers. I got the last 4, broke all the rest. I insulated the chair legs and called for further instructions. Mortimer, it says, Während eines gewählten Entfernungen Metalle, wie Z, B, Ringe, Uhren, Schlüssel, etc. What does that mean, Mortimer? Does it mean that you must keep metals about you, or keep them away from you? Well, I hardly know. It appears to be a little mixed. All German advice is more or less mixed. However, I think that the sentence is mostly in the dative case, with a little genitive and accusative sifted in here and there for luck. So I reckon it means that you must keep some metals about you. Yes, that must be it. It stands to reason that it is. They are in the nature of lightning rods, you know. Put on your fireman's helmet, Mortimer. That is mostly metal. I got it and put it on. A very heavy and clumsy and uncomfortable thing on a hot night in a close room. Even my nightdress seemed to be more clothing than I strictly needed. Mortimer, I think your middle ought to be protected. Won't you buckle on your militia saber, please? I complied. Now, Mortimer, you ought to have some way to protect your feet. Do please put on your spurs. I did it, in silence, and kept my temper as well as I could. Mortimer, it says, Das Gewitter Lauden ist sehr gefährlich, wie die Glocke selbst, sowie der durch der Lauten veranlassete Luftzug. Mortimer, does that mean that it is dangerous not to ring church bells during a thunderstorm? Yes, it seems to mean that. That is, if the past participle of the nominative case singular, and I reckon it is. Yes, I think it means that on account of the height of the church tower and the absence of Luftzug, it would be very dangerous, sehr gefährlich, not to ring the bells in a time of storm. And moreover, don't you see, the very wording, never mind that, Mortimer. Don't waste the precious time and talk. Get the large dinner bell. It is right there in the hall. Quick, Mortimer dear. We are almost safe. Oh dear, I do believe we are going to be saved at last. Our little summer establishment stands at the top of a high range of hills overlooking a valley. Several farmhouses are in our neighborhood, the nearest some 300 or 400 yards away. When I, mounted on the chair, had been clanging that dreadful bell a matter of 7 or 8 minutes, our shutters were suddenly torn open from without, and a brilliant bull's-eye lantern was thrust in at the window, followed by a hoarse inquiry. What in the nation is the matter here? The window was full of men's heads, and the heads were full of eyes that stared wildly at my nightdress and my warlike accoutrements. I dropped the bell, skipped down from the chair in confusion, and said, There is nothing the matter, friends, only a little discomfort on account of the thunderstorm. I was trying to keep off the lightning. Thunderstorm? Lightning? Why, Mr. McWilliams, have you lost your mind? It is a beautiful starlight night. There's been no storm. I looked out, and I was so astonished I could hardly speak for a while. Then I said, I do not understand this. We distinctly saw the glow of the flashes through the curtains and shutters, and heard the thunder. One after another of those people lay down on the ground to laugh, and 2 of them died. One of the survivors remarked, Pity you didn't think to open your blinds and look over to the top of the high hill yonder. What you heard was cannon. What you saw was the flash. You see, the telegraph brought some news just at midnight. Garfield's nominated, and that's what's the matter. Yes, Mr. Twain, as I was saying in the beginning, said Mr. McWilliams, the rules for preserving people against lightning are so excellent and so innumerable that the most incomprehensible thing in the world to me is how anybody ever manages to get struck. So saying, he gathered up his satchel and umbrella and departed, for the train had reached his town. The end. Thank you so much for joining me, and have a good week.